Well, the holiday season is upon us. That magical time of the year when we all act a little nicer, promote goodwill towards men, and watch in joyous glee as Corbin Dallas takes on the Sheriff of Nottingham in a Los Angeles skyscraper. What do you mean, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the greatest Christmas film of all time! Die Hard! Die Hard! That's right, I said Die Hard. I know some people might argue that this film doesn't really capture the spirit of the holiday or whatever, but to me, it just isn't Christmas until I've seen this film. I mean, it's fucking Die Hard. What more do you need? Either way, I for one love this film, and I always thought it would be awesome if they made a game out of it. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. They made several. Yup, there's actually quite a few games based on this film and its sequels, which at least could be pretty awesome, but we're all familiar with the cardinal rule of film-based games by now, right? Never expect too much because they usually suck balls. That said, this is still Die Hard. It shouldn't really be that difficult to turn this into a good or at least decent game, should it? Well, let's find out, because we're going to take a look at some of these games right now. So please, sit back and enjoy as we play some Die Hard games. Let's start off with one you may very well know about already, Die Hard for the NES. I won't talk too much about this one because I really don't have too much to say. All you really need to know is that it's fucking awful. Seriously, this game doesn't work on any level. The music is pretty bad, it doesn't look all that great, and the gameplay is just horrendous. I don't believe for a single second that anyone has made it through this game without some sort of cheat or something, because it's fucking impossible. I'm not kidding, there's no way you'll make it through this game, and in all honesty, I'm not even completely sure how you'd go about doing so anyway. Okay, so I am pretty certain it has something to do with killing all the enemies while collecting the C4 and detonators, but that's basically just a guess. Nothing is explained in the game itself, so if there is some other goal here, I sure as hell don't know what it is. Either way, yeah, that's pretty much what you'll attempt to do here. Find the bad guys and kill as many of them as possible. Sure, that sounds okay, but it's a feat that's all but impossible. At times it's not too difficult to kill them, but for the most part, even one of these fuckers will take away most, if not all, of your health. They just seem to hit you with like 1,000 bullets each time you encounter them, while you will struggle to hit them even once. That's fucking fair, right? Also, it's not like you can just continue where you left off when you die either, because, of course, you only get one life. Yep, in this game you'll die faster than a dayfly on a fucking motorway, but you won't get any extra lives or continues. Are you fucking kidding me? What sort of idiots made this game anyway? Well, I guess it is better than most of the Call of Duty games. Anyway, this game sucks, so let's move on to one that doesn't, namely Die Hard Trilogy. This was actually the first Die Hard game I personally ever played, and you know what? I absolutely loved it. No, really, back in the day, I would play this game until my fingers bled. I just couldn't get enough of it. Then again, I was quite the little moron back then, so does it still hold up? Well, not quite. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely playable and it's way better than the NES game, but it's still quite far from perfect. Before we get into that though, let me just go over exactly what this game is. You see, this game is technically 3 games in one, with 1 game for each of the 3 films that have been released up until then. The first game, based on the first film, is a third-person shooter where the goal is to make your way through Nakatomi Plaza while killing all the bad guys and rescuing as many hostages as possible. Each level is basically 1 floor of the skyscraper and contains a certain number of bad guys to defeat, as well as a certain number of hostages to try and rescue. You don't actually have to rescue the hostages, but if you do, you will get a higher score. Yes, that's right, this game keeps score. In fact, all the games here do. Why? Well, because they're basically just 3 arcade-style games where there technically is an ultimate goal and final boss and whatnot, but really you're just trying to get as high of a score as possible. This may make the game slightly more pointless, but hey, at least they're fun to play, right? Well, kinda. Okay, so it's not like I absolutely hate this game, but it definitely has some issues here and there. In the first game, for example, the controls aren't exactly brilliant. I mean, it's bad enough that the game isn't compatible with the analog sticks, forcing you to use the D-pad to move, but why do you control like a fucking tank? No, really, that's the control style here. You have to turn in place and then move forwards or backwards. Yes, you can strafe or roll to the sides, but that doesn't really help all that much. You still have to turn yourself around like a fucking turret. This all makes it pretty cumbersome to make even simple turns, and it also means that you leave yourself vulnerable to enemy fire quite a lot. There's also a fair amount of glitches and bugs here, at least in my copy, the most common one being the music suddenly cutting out. Okay, so it's not like it usually makes the game unplayable or anything, but it can still be a bit distracting. Still, at least you get a fair amount of weapon variety, and it's always fun to see the enemies explode into a bloody puddle of nothing after being hit with a grenade or something. Now that's just awesome. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the game based on the third film, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Honestly, this game is complete arse. The objective here is to drive around the city looking for bombs and deactivating them before they explode. How do you deactivate them? By driving into them so that they explode anyway. Wait, what? No, I'm not kidding! In order to stop the bombs from exploding, you run into them with your car, which makes them explode! What the hell kind of sense does that make? Okay, so the explosions are much smaller when you drive into the bombs than when they just go off on their own, which totally makes sense by the way, but this still feels a bit stupid. In any case, I guess it doesn't really matter that much if the game is good enough, but like I said, this game is arse. As if the whole objective isn't bad enough in and of itself, they had to completely fuck the controls up the dick. I'm serious, these are some of the worst controls I've ever experienced, especially for a driving game. You barely have any control over these cars whatsoever. They just seem to go wherever the hell they want. You try to turn, you crash. You try to speed up, you crash. Slow down, you crash. Use the handbrake, you crash. Everything you do makes you either skid off uncontrollably or just fucking crash. That is except for when you actually want to crash into something, then you just miss. Seriously, so many times when you're trying to hit the fucking bombs or enemy cars or what have you, you end up just screaming past them. Oh come on, that was fucking ridiculous. Oh, and pray to whatever god you may have that you never find yourself needing to reverse or turn around, because apparently cars aren't supposed to do that. I mean, you do have a reverse gear, but it never seems to work. And if you actually need to turn your car around, you may as well just restart the game, because the bomb will go off way before you manage to do so. Ultimately, you just shouldn't waste your time with this fucking atrociousness. Life is just too short. However, there is one more game here, and luckily, that one is so good and so much fun to play that it pretty much makes up for any and all shortcomings the rest of this game may have, even if it is somewhat simplistic. No, really, the Die Hard 2 game kinda defies all reason because it's honestly just a fairly generic, straightforward rail shooter. It really isn't anything all that special, but holy hell, it's awesome! Like I said, this is technically just a straightforward rail shooter using locations from Die Hard 2 as a backdrop. If you're at all familiar with rail shooters, this shouldn't be anything all that surprising. Move the cursor around the screen and shoot all the bad guys as you automatically move through the scenery. It's really simple and easy to understand, but it's also surprisingly fun. I don't know, there's just something about taking out all these bad guys with your endless supply of bullets that puts me in a really good mood. Maybe I should be a bit concerned about that, but fuck it, I'm having too much fun. I will admit that there are some issues here though. Like the other games on this disc, this one also seems to have a few bugs, again mostly in the audio department, but this is a fairly minor complaint. A much bigger issue is the fact that you don't really have any way of defending yourself from enemy fire. Well, apart from just shooting the bad guys before they shoot you. Okay, so I know that a fair amount of rail shooters work like this, and it's not like it's always a problem, but I still feel like it would have been nice to have a way of ducking behind cover or something, at least sometimes. As it is, you're just bound to lose health at times, and that is never a good thing. It's also a bit of a shame that this game doesn't support any sort of light gun. Okay, so it's nice to have an alternative to that, especially nowadays, and it's not like the controls here don't work or anything, but I think pretty much everyone would agree that it's usually more fun to play these types of games with some sort of gun. That said, I still love this game. It's just so much fun to mow down all these enemies with a fairly decent selection of weapons, including machine guns, shotguns, grenades, and fucking missiles. I could play this game for hours, and I would recommend picking up this trilogy for this title alone. Trust me, it's more than worth it. In any case, since this game actually was a relative hit when it came out, I guess an eventual sequel was inevitable. Too bad they couldn't make it a good one. Yeah, I wish I could say otherwise, but I'm sorry, this game is awful. Okay, so I guess it's at least tolerable at times, and a part of me actually feel like I should like it a bit more than the original, as it does have some improvements, but no, it just sucks. Basically, this is pretty much the same kind of thing as the original, but with one major difference. It has the same 3 game modes, but you actually play them as one single game. You see, this game actually contains a story mode, where you play through all these different game styles in one continuous game. You start with a third-person shooter level, then you go into a rail shooter section, followed by a driving stage, and so on and so forth. In and of itself, this isn't that bad of an idea, as I appreciate their attempt to tie all these modes together somehow, but it really doesn't work. The first problem is just that the story is pretty fucking wretched. Yeah, I know, huge surprise, but still, this is some grade Z bullshit. It starts with John McClane being invited by an old friend to a party honoring this friend for being appointed the new warden of some Las Vegas prison. Unfortunately, when John arrives, some terrorist escapes from said prison, frees all the inmates, and starts wreaking havoc around the city. John is therefore forced to chase them all down and wipe them out. I know, fucking Shakespearean, right? Okay, so to be fair, I guess the story at least sets the stage as it were, but that's pretty much all it does. It just feels like something they slapped together at the last possible second as some desperate attempt to tie everything together, and it really doesn't work. I wouldn't really care too much about that if the game was at least enjoyable though, but this is just sad. Seriously, what the fuck happened here? True, they did add a few new features, but none of them seem to improve anything. For example, they did add support for analog sticks, but they kept the control system pretty much the same, so it doesn't really matter that much. The only real adjustment is the new mode they made for the third-person stages. Basically, you now have the option to switch to a so-called advanced mode, where you can use the left stick to move and the right stick to aim. While this may be a bit better than the normal mode, it still feels really awkward. It also doesn't help that you can't enter first-person view while in this mode, which you'll need to do sometimes, so either way you're just better off sticking to the normal mode. Seriously, why did you even bother with this if it's not going to be helpful at all? They didn't really improve the driving stages either. Okay, so I think I would say they're a little better than in the original, as the controls don't feel quite as bad, but if anything, they actually made it even less fun to play. You see, this time around, you're not searching for bombs, you're just chasing after fleeing vehicles and trying to destroy them before the time runs out. I don't know, I guess it's okay, but I just hate this. It's so fucking tedious, and chasing after these assholes is just annoying. Fuck this shit. Thankfully, the rail shooter sections are still pretty good, and they actually did add light gun support. Unfortunately, I'm not able to play with a light gun at the moment, so for now, I'm stuck using a regular controller. Either way, this is still pretty fun, but again, it just does not work as well as in the original. I don't know, maybe it's the lack of a zoom-in function, or the fact that it seems much harder to be accurate here, but something is just a bit off about this. Ultimately, this is just a weak copy of the original, with very few improvements, most of which don't even work. I'd say just stick with the original, as that is probably the best gaming representation of any Die Hard film. Or is it? I mean, what if you just wanted a game that felt like playing through the first film? Does anything like that exist? Nope, but there is a PC game that feels like playing through a shitty version of that film. Yeah, if you've ever wanted to experience Die Hard but with shittier cinematography, awful acting and weird character changes, then Nakatomi Plaza is the perfect game for you. Seriously though, that is pretty much what this game is, a game version of the first film. Here they pretty much give you the exact same story with the exact same locations and the exact same dialogue as in the film it's based on. The only things they changed were the things that they probably should have left alone. For instance, most of the actors are completely different and they pretty much all suck. I don't know what half-assed school play they plucked these guys from, but none of them give a fucking shit about their performances and none of them sound anything like their film equivalents. You'd think that they'd at least be able to make the characters look the same though, right? Well, there definitely are a few that look pretty accurate, but some of them look absolutely nothing like the original actors. Just look at Ellis. Here's how he looks in the film.
I'm your white knight.
And here's how he looks in the game.
Ellis, I want you to meet John McClane.
Really? That's the best you can do? Did you even watch the film? Because that's not Ellis. Not even close. It's fucking William H. Macy! And hey look, apparently that sci-fi guy was in this too. Huh, I didn't know that. To be fair though, the game itself isn't all that bad. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's not particularly brilliant either, but I've definitely seen worse. Ultimately, it's just a fairly bland and mediocre first-person shooter, but for the most part, I guess it's decent enough. Unfortunately, there's just nothing else to keep you invested here. I mean, why would you want to trudge through a watered-down, half-assed, and just downright worse version of the film when you could just, oh, I don't know, watch the fucking film? Okay, so the film isn't interactive, but still, this just seems kind of pointless. You know, so far these Die Hard games aren't really holding up all that well, are they? I mean, I've only found one enjoyable game so far, and to be fair, even that one has its issues. Well, I'm going to give this franchise one more chance, but if it still can't deliver, someone really will die hard. Yeah, that was a really lame joke, but hell, I've done worse. In any case, our final game is called Die Hard Vendetta, and guess what? It's actually pretty good. Okay, so I wouldn't exactly call it a masterpiece, but it's definitely the best game we've looked at so far. Fair enough, the game has its flaws, some of which are fairly big, but overall it's more than playable. It features an original and fairly decent storyline, the graphics and voice acting is pretty good, and the gameplay is solid and enjoyable, at least for the most part. Okay, so the controls aren't the best, and the AI isn't exactly the brightest I've ever seen, but none of that is really bad enough to take away that much enjoyment from the rest of the game. The various mechanics they've implemented here are just so much fun that it's pretty easy to excuse most of the relatively minor niggles you'll find here and there. Take the whole stealth/capturing segments, for example. While you do mostly go around blasting away bad guys with a decent variety of weapons, you will occasionally have segments where you can and or should opt for stealthiness instead. Why? Well, so that you can sneak up on the bad guys and arrest them instead. Fair enough, you don't really get that much of a reward for doing this, and you can decide to just charge in guns blazing if you so wish, but there is something strangely satisfying about putting all of these idiots in handcuffs and making them kneel down in front of you. Don't you go there, you perverts! I know what I said, just leave it alone. They also managed to add a little bit of humor to this game, which, at least in my view, only makes it that much more enjoyable.
Do you mind?
No, not at all.
All in all, not the best game around, but well worth a look, especially for any and all Die Hard fans. In any case, that's about all the Die Hard games I have time for right now. I pretty much covered them all anyway, apart from some shooter game based on Die Hard 2 for various computer systems I don't have, and an arcade game that was technically not even based around the Die Hard franchise anyway. Maybe I'll get to those some other day, but for now, this'll have to do. All in all, there are some good games here, but as is usually true of licensed games, most of these are not that great. Like I said, I would probably recommend the first Die Hard Trilogy, and I do think Vendetta is well worth a look. Nakatomi Plaza is okay too, I guess, but it's hard to recommend considering it just feels like a really bad version of the film it's based on. The rest of these games can easily be left alone, as they don't really have all that much to offer. Maybe you can find something about them you like if you're a really, really die-hard fan, but I highly doubt it. Either way, I hope you enjoyed my little look at these games, and I hope you've all had a great Christmas and that you all have a very happy and wonderful New Year. As for me, I'm going to find some more games to play, some more films to watch, and generally prepare myself for the upcoming year. Bye for now, and I hope to see you all in 2015. Wow, that was one spectacular video you just saw, wasn't it? Well, guess what? Now you can help make future episodes even better. I know, doesn't seem possible, right? Well, it's true. Simply click on the link to my Patreon page, select the amount you want to donate, and click Become a Patron. By doing this, you will not only allow me to increase my liquor budget, make the show better, but you'll also be able to collect several wonderful rewards, such as access to exclusive videos, your name in the credits, your choice of topic for a video, magical powers, immortality, and much, much more. Well, what are you waiting for? Follow the link, make your donation, and become a patron today.